this series we're going to be using a drawing grid. This will help me to show you how to get the shapes into proportion and positioned well inside your picture area. You will need to draw out a grid like this, 12 centimetres by 12 centimetres, and then draw 2 horizontal lines this way and 2 vertical lines this way. Each of these areas here should be 4 centimetres by 4 centimetres each. Of course, you could draw your grid a lot larger if you want your drawing to be larger, but I think it's quite fun to work on a small scale, especially when you're starting out. It's a good idea to use cheap copy paper to do this stage so that you feel less worried about doing it perfectly and you can just enjoy the sketching. Once you've drawn your grid, you can then either draw it each time that you're going to do a new piece of artwork, or you can photocopy it several times so you've got lots of grids ready for each drawing that we do. For this project, we are going to have a go at drawing a starfish. Now we want to keep that simple, so we're going to use the drawing grid in order to find and simplify the shapes to start our drawing. So to do this part, you're going to need a fresh drawing grid, a pencil that you've sharpened, and a rubber. So the first thing to do is find a central point. So I'm going to put a dot in the middle of that middle square there, and then I want to draw a circle around that middle square. So that's going to give me the body of the starfish. And this doesn't have to be perfectly round because this is a living creature, and that wouldn't be a perfect circle there. This is just one of our guidelines to get the body shape right. So don't worry if you've got some scratchy lines or several lines, that's fine. So then let's think about filling this space with the starfish legs. I think they're called legs. So I'm going to start with a dot up here, and I'm going to put another one up here. So I want 5 legs in all. I'm going to put one that's here, one down in this box there, and one down in this corner here. So that way, straight away, I know that I'm going to fill my space nicely. So from that point then, I want to draw a line that goes from that central dot to there, onto there. Don't worry if your lines aren't straight or a bit wobbly, that's fine. Again, these are just guidelines. So you're just going to join the dots with each of those, and you can start to see that that's created a sort of star shape. So the next thing to do is to flesh out these legs, and the best way to do that is to start with is just to create some triangle shapes. So I'm going to start from a midpoint about there and draw up to that point. Same there, find about a midpoint there, connect that up, and then from that point I can connect to there, and just repeat this going round. and then we're back to the first point there again. So what you'll notice is that those legs are all uneven in size, but that's what the starfish does. As it moves around, the legs curl and bend and change shape, and that's what's quite interesting about the starfish. So we want to kind of get that into the drawing. So that's all you need to do for this first section. If you want to lose any lines with your rubber that you're not happy with, then do so at this point. I've just got one there and a bit there. And that's all you need to do for the first part. Now we can use our drawing grid again to develop the shapes further. So what I'm aiming for are more organic, natural shapes for my starfish. So we need to develop what we've got here with these geometric shapes. So it's just really about kind of softening edges. So if we start here again, use that line pretty much as it is, but at the end here, make more of a sort of curved end to the foot there. And then as you come back round, make that more of a curved line. It's a nice smooth line that bends round there. We can then just take away those initial straight lines that we did, take those out. And then you've got the first foot. So let's follow on round. Again, keep it nice and curvy. Round at the end. And a nice curved line to that point there. I've gone a bit too curved there, so I'm just going to adjust that a bit. You can just adjust things as you go. So have a go at drawing a line. If you feel that it's too straight or too curvy, then just change it at this point. There we go. That's better. So I can take out those lines that are inside. That's the second one. And then from here, sweeping down again. This one I'm going to have the foot coming out to there to fill that space. And then this one here is, it looks short there, but it is a little bit longer because that edge curls upwards. So if we do that, makes a bit more sense of that shape. Take away the guidelines again. This one round, and again curving into the space, that's that direction. And then a nice sweeping line, curving round. To there, and then losing those lines inside. There, that's looking a bit more realistic. Yours might not be exactly the same as mine. You might have the feet going different ways, but that will give you the general idea. So we can now take away this central circle. any lines that we don't want. But it's a good idea just to keep a little dot in the middle there. It's going to be useful to you in your when you come to paint it and finish it off. So next we want to try and get this drawing through onto our art paper so that we can paint it. So here I'm using a light box and I'm going to place my drawing on top of that. I've cut myself a bit of watercolour paper that is about the same size as my drawing grid. In fact, this one's just a little bit larger to give myself a little bit more space, but that's 12 centimetres by 12 centimetres. So remember, if you don't have a light box, you can also use tracing paper to trace down your shape that you've worked out onto your paper, or you can try putting your drawing in front of a window. Imagine that's the light coming through the window, and put your drawing on the surface of a window and then putting your art paper on top. You should get the same sort of effect. So just try and place that where I want it and then draw through. Oh, accidentally touched got a very sensitive button there that turns it on and off, so that's what happened there. It's worth remembering when you're using watercolour paper to make sure you've got really clean hands and try not to touch the surface of the paper as much as you can, because watercolour paper's very sensitive to oils, and we've all got oils on our skin from hair products or makeup, or even soap and things we wash our skin with has oils in it, and those oils can transfer onto the paper surface and then get in the way when you want to put your watercolours on. So it's just something to think about. Try and remember that the surface of the paper is delicate. So that's all we need to do, is follow our shape, and just remember to put that little dot in the middle there as well, because you're going to need that. So now it's time to start the painting, and these are the things that you will need. I'm using a purple liquid watercolour, but you can use any watercolour that you have, any type of watercolour that you have. So it's purple. I've got carmine, which is a sort of pinky red colour, and an actual pink. This one's called fuchsia. That's a nice kind of baby pink, and this one is a deep yellow. So you can see I'm using these Ecoline inks, which are really nice and bright to use. Other watercolour inks are good too, and this one is a white. So you'll see with the white, it's got a different consistency to the other paint. So if you've got a thicker white paint or a white acrylic, that will work really well as well. So you're going to need a palette to put your colours out. You'll need a palette for just mixing, a couple of brushes. So I'm going to pretty much paint everything with this one, which is a number 7 common brush, and a smaller brush for adding the white areas. You can see I've got my drawing, basic drawing, and I have had a little play around with my colours beforehand, which I would definitely advise you to do. So here you can see where I've had a little play with the watercolour inks, just messing around, letting them float into each other, and that way you can decide which colours you want to use for your project. So I'm going to use a pink carmine, which is the red up there, and the purple and some white. You might want to choose a different set of colours, or you might want to follow mine and then do another one in your own colours. So definitely when you're preparing all your pieces of paper and things, keep all those little snippets of watercolour paper that you get left with, because they're brilliant for working things out. Don't forget that you're going to need your paper towel there. And the other thing that I'm going to use for this one is some table salt. So I've put some already in this little pot, and you can see it's just regular salt that you would use at the dinner table. And that's going to help us get some of the effects that are going to work for this project. So make sure that you've got your little pot of salt handy there, and you've got your jar of water handy as well. And what I want to do first is, just with some clean water, just wet this central area of the starfish, just the centre bit first, and just go a little way up the legs there. So it's going to create a nice wet area for the paints to flow into. And then we're going to start with the carmine, which is this lovely rich pinky red colour. And it's a good idea to just get your colours ready, because you're going to use them quickly one after the other. So I'm also going to use some pink, so make sure you've got plenty out ready. And purple was the other one, so I'll pop that one down here. So as I say, you need to have all these paints ready, because you don't want to get halfway down and then have to stop and start mixing some up again, otherwise the technique won't work. So got everything handy there. So let's start with this carmine then, and we're going to go up to this point here. Just going to make sure that my brush doesn't drip water where I don't want it. And start to fill in this shape. Make sure your paints are really nice and fluid. You've got plenty there. And you'll see as that paint comes down and hits that water puddle that you've got in the middle, the colours will start to float off into that area. Just take it down to around about there. Then a quick wash of your brush. Dab off the water and go for the pink. And we're going to start with this one, this shape here. Same way, bring it down so the two colours meet each other in the middle there. Feed into that wet puddle in the middle. And the same on this side. Down, and then quickly turn the whole thing the other way around. Pick up the purple and come in from the bottom here, from the top should I say. Those colours mixing a little bit. There we go. And you can just tip that a little bit to let the colours flow together. Drop a little bit of water in here and there. It's just clear water, just to give a little bit of texture there and to help those colours move together. And if you have some salt, grab a pinch of salt is all you need, and just sprinkle over the top of the wet paint. Now what this will do, wherever the salt granules fall, it will kind of bleach away some of the pigment that's there. What you do have to do though is just let that dry. So you can't really hurry this process. So it's good to maybe have a little break whilst that dries and just let the salt do its thing. As the paint dries, you'll be able to see all these lovely things happening where the salt is playing around with the paint. Now you need to make sure this is really dry, and once it is, you can just brush away the salt granules and you'll be left with a really nice mottled effect. Now I just want to go back to the drawing for a bit and create some background for our starfish so that it looks like he's sitting on the bottom of the ocean. So I'm just going to suggest some little pebbly stones there. Now when you want it to look like the starfish is on top of something, then we would only draw some of what's underneath. So for example, there's a stone there that's fully round. If there was a stone halfway under the starfish, you would only see half of it like that. So if you do that here and there, it kind of gives a realistic look, as though he's actually on top of those pebbles that are there, like as though they're coming out from underneath him. So make sure that your pebbles are of different sizes. So you've got some tiny ones, some larger ones, and don't need to do too many of these, it's just to suggest what's underneath. Now that's really dried, you can see how beautiful that texture and colour is there. Now I want to paint these in. I'm going to use my golden yellow to do this. So I'm going to make some of that ready on there. And I think I actually want to add another colour I didn't mention earlier, but I'm sure you've got this colour in your set. But I think I want to use a bit of burnt sienna, so that's like a warmer brown. So I'm going to pop some of that ready in my palette as well, so that I can do the stones with those two colours. I was actually playing around with that colour earlier when I think about it. So here you can see I did a few stones and I used the yellow and the burnt sienna. They're quite nice together with that purple. So that was my thinking there. So let's start with the lighter ones first. Now you don't want this to be too strong, so don't go too heavy with this. And just pick out a few here and there. Some can be yellow, some can be brown. And then let's move to the brown, burnt sienna. Again, not too dark with this one. And we can do ones that we left behind. See how useful it is to have a really nice point on your brush, because these are very small areas I'm painting, but I'm still using quite a big brush. But because the point is really nice on there, I can deliver the paint to small areas. I'm going to use my white now to add some patterns to the surface of my starfish. But before I do, it's been bothering me that there's a shape on my starfish that I don't like, that I painted in and I don't like. And I thought it'd be useful for you to sort of see how to maybe do some corrections as well when you can use your thicker white paint to do that. So if you look closely here, just that kind of shape there that I'm not happy with, so I'm going to just smooth that out with a bit of white paint first, and then we'll do the patterns on the surface. So you can see this is the white paint, which is much thicker, and you can't see through it, so that's why it's really useful. Going to turn that round so I can get a better grip of it, and I'm just going to do a little bit of a correction there. Now when I do the first layer, it won't cover it completely, so I'm going to have to do that, let that dry, and then come back to it. Sometimes it needs a couple of goes. I've done like a sort of thin layer on there, and that's fine. So I can come back to that later. I feel a bit happier about the shape now. So let's make sure we've got plenty of white then out on the palette there. Again, if you don't have a white watercolour, you can use a product called gouache, or gouache some people call it, or you can use white acrylics, so anything really that's just thicker than watercolour. So I can still see just about that dot that we did in the middle there, so I'm just going to put a point there, and then I'm just going to have fun creating some patterns on the surface of my starfish. I'm going to start in the middle there, nice big blob, and just create a sort of dotty pattern going down each leg. Getting a bit smaller as we go down. Turn it around as you go, make it easier. Make the one in the middle a bit bigger. Just going to go back to my correction. And now we're going to add some dots all around the outline really, but just inside. So these can be smaller, these dots. just to really finish off. And you can do this bit if you want to, and you can leave it out if you're not sure. But that's just really to add a little bit of shadow underneath your starfish. So you will need some very, very pale grey. So the one that I'm using is called warm grey. It's already a sort of pale colour. You don't want this to be too dark, it might kind of spoil things. So see how pale that is there, and there's only certain places that you're going to put this. It's not going to go all around the outside of your starfish. You want it to be, I'll show you on the other one that I did, you want it to be just underneath these areas here. So I'll show you how to apply that. It's a just very thin grey line really that you're doing. Get everything to sit still for me. If you put that on and you sort of think, oh, I can hardly see that, that's good, because it's just a suggestion of shadow. Kind of there, but not there. And there'd probably be a little bit under here. That just kind of lifts it, gives it a little bit more three-dimension. And that's it for your starfish. Thank you for painting along with me today. Hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.